One morning you wake up believing you're the most important person in your son's life, and by evening you discover you're not even worth what he spends on his morning coffee. That June Sunday in 2024, the humiliation didn't just break my heart. It shattered every belief I held about fatherhood, sacrifice, and what it means to be valued by the person you raised alone. My name is Thomas Bennett. I'm 62 years old, and I never imagined I'd spend Father's Day feeling like a stranger at my own son's celebration. The irony wasn't lost on me. After 35 years of putting him first, I had become invisible. Before we go further, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell because we share true stories like this every single day. Drop a like and let me know in the comments where in Canada you're watching from. Your support keeps these stories coming. That morning started like any other Father's Day in Toronto. I woke at 5:30 a.m. out of habit, even though I'd been semi-retired for 2 years. The construction business I'd built over 3 decades didn't need me on site anymore, but the internal clock never adjusted. I stood at my bedroom window overlooking the quiet street in North York, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. My late wife, Catherine, would have loved mornings like this. She'd been gone 8 years, taken by cancer that moved faster than any of us could process. Some days I still reached for her side of the bed, forgetting for that split second that I was alone. I shaved carefully, combed my gray hair, and pulled on the navy sweater my son Marcus had given me 3 years ago, back when he still put thought into gifts, back when I mattered. I splashed on the cologne Catherine had loved, a habit I couldn't break even after all these years. It made me feel closer to her somehow, like she was still watching over me with that gentle smile of hers. At the bakery on Yonge Street, I picked up Marcus's favorite butter tarts, the ones from that small shop near Finch Station that had been there since he was a boy. Mrs. Kowalski, who'd owned the place for 40 years, greeted me with her usual warmth. "Something special for Father's Day, Mr. Bennett?" she asked, already boxing up a dozen tarts. "Your son is a lucky man to have a father like you." If only she knew. I smiled and thanked her, paid the $28, and drove to Marcus's house in Markham, with that familiar, nervous excitement in my chest, the kind of hope that makes you vulnerable, the kind that sets you up for devastation. Marcus lived in one of those new developments where every house looked identical, 3-story brick colonials with double garages and professionally landscaped front yards. I'd helped him with the $85,000 down payment 4 years ago when he and Jennifer bought the place. At the time, my savings account took a serious hit, but I told myself it was an investment in my son's future, in my grandson's future, in family. The front door was open when I arrived around noon. I could hear voices and laughter drifting from the backyard, that particular kind of celebration noise that doesn't include you. I walked through the house, carrying my box of butter tarts like an offering, and stepped onto the wooden deck. What I saw next would replay in my mind for months. Marcus stood beside a brand new Harley-Davidson motorcycle, its chrome gleaming in the June sunlight. He was holding a set of keys, grinning wider than I'd seen in years, presenting them to his father-in-law, Robert Chen. About 20 people stood around clapping and whistling. Friends, neighbors, Jennifer's family. Robert accepted the keys with exaggerated surprise, acting like he hadn't known, though his perfectly timed reaction suggested otherwise. "You're like a father to me, Robert," Marcus announced loud enough for everyone to hear, his arm around his father-in-law's shoulders. "You've taught me more about business and life than anyone. This is just a small thank you." A small thank you. I later found out that Harley cost $45,000. $45,000 for a man who'd been in Marcus's life for exactly 6 years. A man who owned 3 successful restaurants across Toronto and drove a Mercedes. A man who didn't need a motorcycle but would certainly enjoy being publicly honored with one. And me? I stood there holding my $28 box of butter tarts, invisible. Marcus finally noticed me, and his eyes showed a flash of something. Guilt? Discomfort? It was gone too quickly to identify. "Dad!" "You made it," he said, walking over with a forced cheerfulness. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small wrapped package. "Happy Father's Day." I opened it while everyone's attention returned to Robert and his new motorcycle. Inside was a ceramic coffee mug with "World's Okayest Dad" printed on it in faded letters. The price sticker was still on the bottom, $19.99 from Winners. There was a card that read, "Dad, I know you like your coffee. Enjoy. Love, Marcus, Jennifer, and Ethan." Generic. Thoughtless. Worth exactly $20, while Robert received $45,000. I held that mug and felt something crack inside me. It wasn't anger yet. It was worse. It was the awful realization that I'd been fooling myself for years. I'd believed my son loved me. I'd believed all my sacrifices had built an unbreakable bond. I'd believed I mattered. "Thanks, son," I managed to say, my voice steady despite everything collapsing internally. Very practical. Nobody else asked what I'd received. Nobody noticed the cheap mug or the absurdity of the contrast. They were all too busy photographing Robert on his new Harley, watching him rev the engine, listening to him thank Marcus for his incredible generosity. Jennifer, my daughter-in-law, was recording everything on her phone, posting it to social media in real time with captions about what an amazing husband and son-in-law she had. Marcus beamed with pride, soaking in the praise from Robert's friends about what a successful man he must be to afford such a gift. The only person who seemed to notice anything wrong was my 10-year-old grandson, Ethan. He slipped away from the crowd and came to stand beside me on the deck. "Hi, Grandpa," he said quietly. "Did you get something nice for Father's Day?" I showed him the mug, and even at 10, he understood. His face fell. "That's it? But Dad spent so much on Grandpa Robert's motorcycle. I heard Mom say it cost more than their car." "It's okay, buddy," I said, ruffling his hair. "I don't need expensive things." But Ethan looked at me with those perceptive brown eyes and said something that would stick with me forever. "Grandpa, it's not about expensive. It's about showing someone they matter. You taught me that." I had taught him that. During our Saturday afternoons together, when I'd take him to the park or help with his homework, I'd always emphasized that love was shown through attention and effort, not money. And here was my own son demonstrating the opposite. The party continued for hours. I sat in a corner of the yard, largely ignored, watching Marcus play the role of devoted son-in-law while I held my cheap mug and untouched butter tarts. Several people asked Robert about his new motorcycle. Nobody asked about my Father's Day. The message was clear. I was furniture. Expected. Taken for granted. Invisible. When I left around 4 p.m., Marcus gave me a quick hug. "Thanks for coming, Dad. We'll talk soon, okay?" His attention was already back on Robert, who was organizing a group photo with the motorcycle. I drove home through Sunday traffic on the 401, and that's when the crack inside me started spreading. I wasn't just hurt. I was awakening to a pattern I'd ignored for years. This wasn't new behavior. It was just the most obvious, most public display of how little I meant to my son. At home, I sat in my living room armchair and stared at that $20 mug. Then I got up and went to my office, the small room where I kept all my files. Catherine and I had been meticulous record keepers. Every receipt, every bank statement, every loan document was organized in filing cabinets that lined one wall. I pulled out the file labeled Marcus and spread the contents across my desk. What I saw over the next 3 hours painted a picture I'd been avoiding for too long. The private school tuition, $18,000 per year for 8 years. Total, $144,000. The university education at Queen's, $25,000 per year for 5 years, because he changed majors twice. Total, $125,000. The wedding to Jennifer, $32,000. I'd covered it completely after Catherine passed because Marcus said he couldn't afford the kind of wedding Jennifer's family expected. The house down payment, $85,000. The car loan I'd co-signed and eventually paid off when he hit a rough patch, $28,000. The business investment 2 years ago when he wanted to start a consulting company with Robert's guidance, $50,000. That company had folded within 8 months. Monthly help over the past 6 years, usually $1,000 to $2,000 for various emergencies, bills, or opportunities, roughly $90,000. I did the math 3 times, hoping I'd made an error. The total came to $554,000. $554,000 I'd given my son over his lifetime. Not loans. Gifts. Investments in his future that I never expected back, because that's what fathers do. But it wasn't just the money. It was the time. After Catherine died when Marcus was 28, I'd been there for everything. Every crisis, every celebration, every midnight phone call when his world was falling apart. I'd been his therapist, his financial advisor, his handyman, his babysitter. I'd rearranged my life around his needs. And on Father's Day 2024, my value was assessed at $20. I sat there until past midnight, surrounded by receipts and bank statements, and something fundamental shifted in me. For the first time in my life, I felt not just hurt but clear-minded. The fog of unconditional paternal love lifted, and I saw the relationship for what it had become: transactional. I gave, Marcus took. I sacrificed, Marcus expected. I loved, Marcus tolerated. That clarity brought an unexpected peace. Not happiness, but purpose. I would not spend the rest of my life being invisible to my own son. I would not continue enabling his disrespect. I would not die knowing I'd allowed myself to be valued at less than a tank of gas. The banks would open Tuesday morning. I had about 36 hours to decide exactly how I would reclaim my dignity. But one thing was certain. This was the last Father's Day Marcus would remember for a cheap mug. And the first one where I learned that self-respect sometimes means disappointing the people who've disappointed you. I stood up from my desk, feeling older but somehow stronger. Catherine's photo sat on the bookshelf, and I could almost hear her voice. "Thomas, enough is enough. Stand up for yourself." She'd always been the tougher one between us. The story of what happened next would redefine everything I thought I knew about family, love, and the price of dignity. But at that moment, surrounded by evidence of a lifetime of one-sided devotion, I knew only one truth. Things were about to change dramatically, and there would be no going back. In the days following that humiliating Father's Day, my mind became a relentless machine, processing years of memories I'd conveniently softened or ignored. Sleep came in brief, fitful intervals. I'd wake at 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m., each time with another piece of the puzzle clicking into place. The picture it formed wasn't pretty. I remembered Marcus at 7, crying after his mother missed his soccer game because of a work emergency. I'd left my construction site, mud still on my boots, and made it for the second half. I was there for every game after that, every single one for 11 years. I remembered him at 16, arrested for underage drinking at a party. I'd gone to the police station at midnight, paid the fine, dealt with the lawyer, made sure it didn't go on his permanent record. I never told Catherine how much that lawyer cost. $4,500 I took from our vacation fund. We never did make it to the Maritimes that year. I remembered him at 22, calling me from Queen's University in tears because he'd failed 2 courses and might not graduate on time. I'd driven to Kingston that same day, met with his professors, arranged for extra tutoring that cost $3,000, and sat with him every weekend for 3 months helping him study. He graduated. At the ceremony, he thanked Jennifer, who he'd just started dating, but forgot to mention me in his speech. The pattern had always been there. I just hadn't wanted to see it. The real wake-up call came when I started investigating Marcus's current financial situation. I'd always assumed he was doing well. He had the nice house, drove a Lexus. Jennifer wore expensive jewelry. They took trips to Mexico and the Caribbean. They belonged to a golf club. From the outside, they looked prosperous. On Monday morning, I did something I'd never done before. I accessed the business records for Bennett Construction Limited, the company I'd built from nothing and had made Marcus a 30% shareholder in 3 years ago. As the majority owner and president, I had full legal access to everything. What I found made my stomach turn. Marcus had been systematically withdrawing money from the business account for personal expenses. Not his salary, which was generous at $95,000 per year for minimal work. These were extra draws. $5,000 here, $8,000 there, $12,000 for business development that never developed any business. Over the past 2 years, he'd taken an additional $87,000 beyond his salary. I dug deeper. I found emails between Marcus and Robert Chen discussing investment opportunities that required capital from the old man's company. That's what he called it. Not our company or the family business. The old man's company. The most damaging discovery came from Marcus's corporate credit card statements. He'd been using company funds to entertain Robert's family. Expensive dinners at Robert's restaurants, ironically. Tickets to Blue Jays games in the premium seats. A weekend at a Muskoka resort for business discussions that included Jennifer and her parents. The Harley Davidson, purchased on the company card 3 weeks before Father's Day. He'd used my business to buy his father-in-law a $45,000 motorcycle. I sat in my office, the evidence spread before me, and felt something beyond anger. It was a cold, crystalline clarity. Marcus hadn't just been disrespectful. He'd been actively stealing from me while pretending everything was fine. He'd been redirecting family resources to impress a man who didn't need or deserve them, all while giving me a cheap mug. I called my lawyer, Gerald Morrison, who'd handled my business affairs for 20 years. Gerald was in his late 60s, semi-retired, but he agreed to meet me that afternoon at his downtown Toronto office. "Thomas, you look terrible," he said when I walked in, which was his version of concern. I laid everything out for him. The Father's Day gift disparity, the financial records, the unauthorized company withdrawals, the business credit card abuse. Gerald listened without interrupting, making notes in his precise handwriting. When I finished, he sat back and removed his glasses. "Thomas, what you're describing is corporate financial misconduct. Marcus has breached his fiduciary duty as a shareholder. Legally, you have grounds to remove him from the company entirely." "Can it be done quickly?" I asked. "With proper documentation?" "Yes. We can call an emergency shareholders meeting. As the 70% majority shareholder, you have the authority to remove him as an officer and to buy out his shares at fair market value. Given the circumstances, you could also press charges for theft, though that's a family decision." "No charges," I said immediately. "He was still my son, but I want him out of the company, completely." Gerald nodded. "I'll need a few days to prepare the paperwork. We'll need an independent valuator to assess his 30% stake. Based on the company's current value of approximately $2.1 million, his shares are worth about $630,000. However, given the documented unauthorized withdrawals, we can argue for a reduced buyout or even forfeiture." The number shocked me. I'd built that company from a one-man operation with a truck and some tools. Now it was worth over $2 million, and Marcus had done almost nothing to contribute to that value. Yet, he owned 30% because I'd given it to him, believing we were building a legacy together. "I don't want to cheat him," I said carefully. "I want to be fair, but I want him to understand there are consequences. Then we'll offer him $400,000 for his shares, minus the $87,000 in unauthorized withdrawals. That's $313,000. He can accept it, or we can go through a lengthy legal process where a judge might award him even less, given the circumstances." I nodded. It was fair. More than fair, actually. "There's another matter," I said. "My will." Gerald pulled out another file. "My current will left everything to Marcus. The house worth $850,000, my investment accounts totaling $420,000, my savings of $145,000, the 70% of the company, and various other assets. Total estate value approximately $2.8 million. Marcus was set to inherit everything. "I want to change it," I said. Immediately. Over the next 2 hours, Gerald and I drafted a new will. Marcus would receive exactly $45,000, the cost of Robert's motorcycle. The message would be clear. Your father is worth exactly what you deemed your father-in-law worth. The rest would be divided as follows. $800,000 to Ethan in a trust fund he'd access at age 25, managed by Gerald until then. $500,000 to the Toronto General Hospital Foundation in Catherine's memory. $300,000 split between various charities. My house would be sold and proceeds added to Ethan's trust. The remaining 70% of Bennett Construction would go to my nephew David, who'd been working for me for 15 years and actually deserved it. "Thomas, you're certain about this?" Gerald asked. "Once we execute this will, it's final. I'll include a no contest clause, so if Marcus challenges it, he forfeits even the $45,000. I'm certain. We signed the documents that afternoon with two of Gerald's colleagues as witnesses. I felt lighter walking out of that office than I'd felt in years. The next step was the hardest: the bank. Tuesday morning at 9 a.m., I walked into my TD Canada Trust branch on Yonge Street. I'd been banking there for 35 years. Pauline Desrosiers, the branch manager, greeted me personally. "Mr. Bennett, wonderful to see you. What can we help you with today?" "I need to remove my son from all joint accounts," I said simply. Her smile faltered slightly. "Of course. If you'll come into my office, we can handle that." Marcus had been on 3 of my accounts: my primary checking account with $67,000, a savings account with $145,000, and a line of credit with a $100,000 limit he'd never used but had access to. I'd added him years ago, thinking it would help him in emergencies and make things easier when I eventually died. "I want his name removed from everything," I told Pauline. "I also want to close the corporate credit card in his name." "May I ask if there's a problem?" "My son has been making unauthorized withdrawals. I need to protect my assets." Pauline, professional as always, didn't pry further. She processed everything efficiently. Within an hour, Marcus's access to $312,000 in cash and credit was gone. "Is there anything else?" she asked. "Yes. If my son contacts you or comes in person asking about these accounts, you're to tell him nothing. Privacy laws protect that, correct?" "Absolutely, Mr. Bennett." I left the bank feeling something I hadn't expected: powerful. For the first time in decades, I wasn't reacting to Marcus's needs or accommodating his requests. I was acting on my own behalf, and it felt necessary. That afternoon, I met with David, my nephew. He was 37, married with 2 kids, and had worked his way up from laborer to site supervisor in my company. Unlike Marcus, David showed up every day, solved problems, treated employees with respect, and never asked for special treatment because of family connections. "Uncle Tom, you wanted to see me?" he asked. Sitting in my office at the company headquarters in Scarborough, I explained everything: the Father's Day incident, the financial misconduct, my plans to remove Marcus from the company, and my will. David listened, his expression growing darker. "Uncle Tom, I had no idea. I knew Marcus wasn't around much, but I didn't know about the financial stuff." "I need to ask you something," I said. "If I remove Marcus and offer you a path to eventually taking over this company, would you want that?" His eyes widened. "Are you serious?" "Completely. You've earned it. Marcus has taken it for granted. I built this company for family, but family means people who actually show up and contribute." David stood and extended his hand. "I'd be honored, Uncle Tom. I'll make you proud." We shook on it, and I felt Catherine's approval. She'd always liked David, said he had a good heart and strong work ethic. Everything was in place. The legal documents were filed, the bank accounts were secured, the will was changed, the company restructuring was prepared. All that remained was waiting for Marcus to discover that his world of unearned privileges had silently collapsed around him. I knew the moment would come soon. Marcus had been calling me every Sunday like clockwork for years, usually asking how I was before eventually getting around to whatever he needed. This Sunday he'd call, and I'd see if he even remembered it was the Sunday after Father's Day. See if he bothered to ask if I'd like my gift. As I sat in my home office that evening, looking at Catherine's photo, I felt her presence strongly. "I'm doing the right thing, aren't I?" I asked her picture. The setting sun cast a warm glow across her smiling face, and I took it as a sign. Yes, I was doing exactly what I should have done years ago, teaching my son that respect is not optional, that dignity is not negotiable, and that actions have consequences, even when they come from family. The confrontation was coming, but I was ready, more than ready. I was at peace with what had to be done. The earthquake hit on a Thursday, 8 days after Father's Day, when Marcus tried to use his corporate credit card at a business lunch with Robert Chen. I wasn't there, but Jennifer told me later, during one of our difficult conversations, that Marcus's card was declined while paying for an expensive meal at Canoe Restaurant, that upscale spot on the 54th floor of the TD Bank Tower. In front of Robert, several business associates, and 2 potential investors. The waiter returned quietly and said the card wasn't working. Marcus tried it 3 times. Each time, declined. Robert ended up paying, and Marcus spent the rest of the lunch trying to contact the company bookkeeper, getting increasingly frantic voicemails that his access had been adjusted. He called me 7 times during that lunch. I didn't answer. By the time he got to the bank at 3:45 p.m., he was barely containing his panic. Pauline later told me, within legal bounds, that he'd been quite agitated when trying to access accounts he'd had authorization for just days earlier. "I'm sorry, Mr. Bennett, but you no longer have signing authority on those accounts," she'd explained professionally. "What do you mean? Those are my father's accounts. I've had access for years. The account holder made changes. You'll need to speak with him directly." That's when my phone started ringing non-stop. Between 4 p.m. Thursday and midnight, Marcus called me 31 times. 31. I didn't answer a single one. The voicemails grew increasingly desperate. First one, 4:17 p.m. "Dad, hey, can you call me? There's some issue with the business card. Need to clear it up." Fifth one, 5:32 p.m. "Dad, seriously, I need you to call me back. The bank says you made changes to the accounts. This has to be a mistake." 12th one, 7:45 p.m. "Dad, what the hell is going on? Jennifer and I are freaking out. Did someone hack your accounts? Call me immediately." 23rd one, 10:28 p.m. "Dad, please. I know you're upset about Father's Day. I get it. The gift was thoughtless. But you can't just cut me off from everything. We need to talk about this like adults." The final one, 11:47 p.m. "Dad, please. I'm sorry. I don't know what else to say. Just call me back. Please." I listened to each voicemail once, sitting in my living room with a glass of scotch. That last one almost broke my resolve. Almost. Then I remembered the cheap mug, still sitting on my kitchen counter where I'd left it as a reminder. I remembered the $45,000 motorcycle. I remembered feeling invisible at my own son's celebration. No, this was necessary. Friday morning, Marcus showed up at the company offices at 7:30 a.m. David called me immediately. "Uncle Tom, Marcus is here. He looks rough. He's demanding to see you. Tell him I'll be there in an hour." When I arrived at 8:30, Marcus was waiting in my office. He'd let himself in using his key, which was another thing I'd need to change. He looked like he hadn't slept. His clothes were rumpled, his eyes red-rimmed, his hair disheveled. "Dad," he stood up immediately. "Thank God. What's happening? Why can't I access anything?" I set my briefcase down slowly, deliberately, and took my seat behind the desk. "Have a seat, Marcus." "I don't want to sit. I want to know why you've locked me out of everything without any explanation." "Sit down." My voice carried an authority I rarely used with him. Saturday. I opened my briefcase and pulled out a folder. "This is a printout of every unauthorized withdrawal you've made from Bennett Construction over the past 2 years. It totals $87,000. His face went pale. "Dad, I can explain. This," I continued, pulling out another document, "is a record of your corporate credit card purchases, including a $45,000 motorcycle purchased 3 weeks ago. You were going to use my company's money to buy your father-in-law a gift while giving me a $20 mug." "Yes, I understand perfectly." The silence in the office was deafening. Marcus opened his mouth several times, but no words came out. "I've had a corporate valuation done," I continued, my voice steady. "Your 30% stake in this company is worth approximately $630,000. I'm offering you $313,000 for it. That's $400,000 minus the $87,000 you stole." "Stole? Dad, I didn't steal. You took money without authorization for personal use. That's theft. I'm being generous by not pressing charges." His eyes filled with tears, real tears, not manipulation. "Dad, please. I know I messed up, but you can't do this. This company was supposed to be our legacy." "It was. Until you decided I was worth less than a stranger." "Robert's not a stranger. He's family. He's been in your life for 6 years, Marcus. 6 years. I've been here for 35. I raised you alone after your mother died. I paid for everything. I gave you every opportunity, and you valued me at $20. Marcus broke down completely, sobbing into his hands. I'm so sorry, Dad. You're right. The gift was horrible. I don't even know what I was thinking. Robert's been helping with business connections, and Jennifer really wanted me to do something big for him, and I got caught up in trying to impress everyone, and I completely forgot what really mattered. His words might have moved me a month ago, but I'd spent the past week seeing our relationship clearly for the first time. Marcus, this isn't just about Father's Day. That was simply the moment I stopped making excuses for you. This is about years of taking me for granted, years of treating me like an ATM, years of prioritizing other people while assuming I'd always be here, always give more, always ask for nothing in return. I'll make it right. I'll pay back the $87,000. I'll sell the Lexus if I have to. Just don't cut me out of the company. Please. The decision is made. Gerald is preparing the paperwork. You'll receive the $313,000 buyout within 30 days. You're no longer an officer or shareholder of Bennett Construction. Dad, no. This is my future. Our future. Your future is what you build yourself. Mine is what I build for people who actually value me. Who? David. Bitterness crept into his voice. You're giving my birthright to a nephew? I'm giving it to someone who shows up, someone who works hard, someone who doesn't steal from the company and lie about it. Marcus stood up, his grief transforming into anger. Fine. I'll fight this. I'll get lawyers. You can't just take away what's mine. Actually, I can. It was never yours. It was mine, and I shared it with you out of love. But love requires reciprocity, Marcus. You can't just take forever and give nothing back. He stormed toward the door, then turned back. What about your will? Am I cut out of that too? I met his eyes steadily. You'll receive exactly what you gave me. Fair's fair. His face went through several expressions as he tried to calculate what that meant. Then understanding dawned. 45,000? Close. The motorcycle cost $45,000. I'm leaving you that amount. Everything else goes elsewhere. You're leaving me $45,000 from a nearly $3 million estate? His voice cracked. After everything we've been through? After Mom died and it was just us? After Mom died, Marcus, I gave you everything. My time, my money, my energy, my love. What did you give me back? Honestly, he couldn't answer. You're 35 years old. You have a good job, a beautiful family, a nice house. You'll survive just fine without my money. What you might not survive is the lesson, but that's something you'll have to work through. Grandpa? We both turned. Ethan stood in the doorway of my office, holding his backpack. Jennifer must have dropped him off early for his Friday tradition of spending the morning with me at the company before we'd go for lunch. Ethan, buddy, not now, Marcus said, wiping his eyes quickly. But Ethan walked past his father and came to me. Grandpa, are you okay? Dad looks upset. We're having a difficult conversation, Ethan. Adult stuff. My grandson looked at his father, then at me, and with the clarity that sometimes only children possess, asked, Is this about the cheap mug? Marcus's face crumbled. Even he couldn't escape the judgment in his son's innocent question. Ethan, go wait in the break room, Marcus said roughly. Now, Marcus, I said firmly, don't take your mistakes out on him. We stared at each other, father and son, and I saw the exact moment he understood there was no negotiation, no emotional manipulation, no going back. This was final. I hope you can live with this, he said bitterly. Destroying your relationship with your only son over a gift. I'm not destroying anything, Marcus. I'm simply refusing to be destroyed anymore. There's a difference. He left without another word, passing David in the hallway without acknowledgement. David came in cautiously. Uncle Tom, you all right? I'm fine, David. Better than fine, actually. And I meant it. For the first time in years, I felt like myself again. Not Marcus's father, not Marcus's ATM, just Thomas Bennett, a man with self-respect and boundaries. Ethan came back in, and we went to lunch as planned. Over burgers at our usual spot, he asked, Grandpa, are you and Dad fighting? We're going through some tough times, buddy. But it's not your fault, and it doesn't change how much I love you. I heard what you said about the cheap mug and being worth less than Grandpa Robert. You weren't supposed to hear that. But it's true, isn't it? Dad gave you something cheap and gave Grandpa Robert something expensive. That's not fair. No, it's not. And Grandpa finally decided he deserves better. Ethan nodded seriously. Good. You do deserve better. You're the best grandpa anyone could have. That simple statement, from a 10-year-old boy, meant more to me than any expensive gift ever could. It reminded me why I was doing this. Not for revenge, not even for justice, but for dignity. For the simple principle that every person, even a father, deserves to be valued by the people they love. The legal process moved forward, the company buyout. The will was finalized and sealed. And I began the process of rebuilding my life around people who actually appreciated me. Starting with a 10-year-old boy who understood what his father had forgotten. That love is measured in attention and respect, not just in what you can get from someone. Marcus tried calling 17 more times over the next week. I didn't answer. He sent text messages ranging from angry to apologetic to desperate. I didn't respond. He showed up at my house twice. I didn't let him in. The silence, I discovered, was its own kind of answer. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is stop enabling them to hurt you. The months following the confrontation unfolded with a painful inevitability, like watching a building you'd constructed with your own hands being demolished floor by floor. But sometimes demolition is necessary to build something better, even if the process breaks your heart. Marcus received the buyout check for $313,000 in mid-July. Gerald delivered it personally with the final paperwork. According to Gerald, Marcus had tried to negotiate, to argue, to find some loophole. There wasn't one. Everything was legal, properly documented, and ironclad. He'd signed the documents without saying a word, his face hollow. The money, while substantial, wasn't enough to maintain the lifestyle he and Jennifer had been living. The Lexus was sold within weeks, replaced with a 3-year-old Honda Accord. The golf club membership was quietly canceled. The Caribbean vacation planned for August never happened. I learned these details not from Marcus, we hadn't spoken since that day in my office, but from Ethan during our now twice-weekly lunches. My grandson had become the unwitting bridge between two men who could no longer communicate. Mom's really stressed, Ethan confided over burgers in late August. She keeps saying they need to budget better. Dad's been looking for a new job, but I don't think anyone's hiring for what he wants. Your dad is very capable, Ethan. He'll figure things out. He cries sometimes. I hear him late at night when they think I'm asleep. Mom cries too. That hit me harder than I wanted to admit. I wasn't immune to Marcus's suffering. He was still my son. But I'd learned the difference between empathy and enabling. I could feel sad about his pain without rushing to fix it for him. In September, Jennifer reached out to me directly for the first time since everything had imploded. She asked to meet for coffee at a Tim Hortons in Markham, neutral territory. She looked tired when she arrived, older than her 34 years. Thomas, thank you for meeting me. How are you, Jennifer? Honestly, not great, but that's not why I wanted to talk. She took a deep breath. I owe you an apology, a massive one. I waited. I pushed Marcus to buy that motorcycle for my dad. I pushed hard. My father had been making comments about how successful my brother's husbands were, and I felt like Marcus needed to prove himself. I thought a big gesture would show that we'd made it, that we were doing well. I never thought about what it would mean to you. I never thought about how it would look. I was selfish and stupid, and I'm so sorry. Her apology seemed genuine, and I found I didn't have the energy to hold a grudge against my daughter-in-law. Thank you for saying that, Jennifer. Marcus is devastated. He knows he destroyed everything. He's trying to be better, but the damage is done, isn't it? Some things can't be fixed with apologies, Jennifer. They can only be learned from. She nodded, tears in her eyes. Your new will, Ethan told me. $45,000. That's all Marcus gets? That's all Marcus earned. And Ethan gets $800,000 in trust? Ethan is innocent in all of this. He deserves security, and he's the only one who's ever made me feel valued without needing anything in return. I understand. I don't like it, but I understand. She wiped her eyes. Can you at least talk to Marcus? Let him apologize properly? When he's ready to apologize without expecting something in return, he'll know how to reach me. Jennifer left looking defeated, and I felt the weight of it all. This wasn't fun. It wasn't satisfying in the way revenge should be. It was just necessary, like amputating a limb to save the body. In October, I received news that would test my resolve completely. Robert Chen, Marcus's beloved father-in-law, showed up at my house unannounced on a Tuesday afternoon. I almost didn't let him in, but curiosity won out. "Mr. Bennett," he said formally, standing in my living room with obvious discomfort. "I owe you an apology." This I hadn't expected. Robert was in his mid-60s, successful, usually confident to the point of arrogance. Now he looked genuinely ashamed. "I didn't know," he said simply. "I didn't know what Marcus had given you for Father's Day. I didn't know he'd used company funds for my motorcycle. I didn't know any of it until Jennifer told me last week. And I felt sick." "Why are you here, Robert?" "Because I can't keep the motorcycle. It's not right. Marcus needs to sell it, get the money back. I don't know how your family financial arrangements work, but that money should go to you or to them. That's between you and Marcus." "No, it's between men who should know better. I'm a father too, Mr. Bennett. I have 3 daughters. If any of their husbands treated me the way Marcus treated you, I'd be heartbroken. More than that, I'd be angry. You have every right to be angry." I gestured for him to sit, and we talked for over an hour. Robert explained that he'd been flattered by Marcus's attention, had enjoyed feeling important to a younger man, but had never encouraged the kind of financial excess Marcus had engaged in. "I told him to focus on his own family," Robert said, multiple times. "But he was always trying to impress me, trying to prove he was successful. I should have shut it down harder. Marcus is a grown man responsible for his own choices." "True, but I benefited from those choices, and that makes me complicit." Robert stood. "The motorcycle is being sold this week. I'm giving the money to Jennifer directly to help with their expenses. It's not much, but it's what I can do." After he left, I felt a strange mix of vindication and sadness. Even the man Marcus had prioritized over me understood how wrong it all had been. November brought the first real snowfall, and with it, a crisis. Ethan called me from school, something he'd never done before. "Grandpa? Mom and Dad are fighting really badly. Mom says we might have to move. Dad says it's all your fault for being cruel. Can you please fix this?" My heart broke for him. "Buddy, your parents' problems are between them. It's not your job to fix it, and it's not your fault. But you could help them, right? You have money. You could give Dad his company back." "Ethan, if I did that, your dad wouldn't learn anything. And sometimes the kindest thing we can do for someone is let them figure things out on their own. Even if it means we lose our house." That's when I learned they'd remortgaged to pay down other debts and were now struggling with the payments. Marcus had found a job, but it paid $60,000, nearly $40,000 less than he'd been making with the company. I wrestled with it. I prayed about it. I asked Catherine's picture for guidance. And ultimately, I made a decision that surprised even me. I called Jennifer. "The mortgage payments, how much are you behind?" "Thomas, we can't ask you for—" "You're not asking. I'm offering. I'll cover 3 months of payments. $7,500. That gives Marcus time to stabilize your finances. But Jennifer, this is the last time. After this, you're on your own." "Why? After everything Marcus did, why would you help?" "Because Ethan lives in that house. And because being firm doesn't mean being cruel. But if Marcus thinks this means I'm softening, he's wrong. This is for you and my grandson, not for him." I sent the money the next day with a letter stating clearly, "One-time help, no expectation of reconciliation, done purely for Ethan's stability." Marcus called after Jennifer told him. "For the first time in months," I answered. "Dad," his voice was rough, "Jennifer told me what you did. I don't understand. I thought you hated me." "I don't hate you, Marcus. I'm disappointed. There's a difference. The mortgage help. That's really generous. After everything It's not for you. It's for Ethan. Don't confuse the two things." Silence. Then, "Can we talk? Really talk? I need to tell you things. I need to apologize properly." "Are you apologizing because you want forgiveness? or because you've actually changed? More silence. I don't know, maybe both? When it's just the second one, we'll talk. I hung up, and I felt okay about it. Not happy, not vindictive, just okay. Boundaries, I was learning, were uncomfortable but necessary. December arrived, and with it my 63rd birthday. I spent it with David and his family, with Ethan, and with a few close friends. Marcus sent a card, actually went to a store and picked out a meaningful one with a handwritten note that said simply, "I'm trying to be better. I'm sorry I wasn't before. Happy birthday, Dad. I love you." I put it on my mantle, not ready to respond, but not ready to throw it away either. On Christmas Eve, Ethan asked if his parents could come to my house for dinner. "Please, Grandpa? Just for Christmas?" I looked at my grandson's hopeful face and made a decision that felt right. Okay. But Ethan, this doesn't mean everything's fixed. You understand that? I understand. I just want us to be together for Christmas. Even if it's weird. It was weird. Marcus and Jennifer arrived at 6 p.m. with Ethan, and a small, inexpensive gift for me, a framed photo of Ethan and me from one of our lunches. Thoughtful, personal, actually meaningful. We ate dinner with careful conversation, avoiding the elephant in the room. Ethan talked about school, Jennifer shared news about her nursing program, and Marcus mostly stayed quiet. As they were leaving, Marcus asked if we could talk privately for just 5 minutes. In my study, he didn't make excuses. He didn't ask for anything. He just said, "Dad, I've been going to therapy, trying to understand why I acted the way I did. I don't have all the answers yet, but I'm starting to see how entitled I became, how I took advantage of your love because I knew it was unconditional. That was wrong. That was cruel. And I'm truly sorry. Thank you for saying that. I know I can't fix this with words. I know the company's gone. I know the inheritance is gone. I know I burned it all down. I'm not asking you to change any of that. I just want you to know that I'm trying to become someone worthy of being your son again." For the first time in months, I saw actual humility in Marcus's eyes, not manipulation, not desperation, just honest recognition of his failures. That's all I've ever wanted, Marcus. Not for you to be perfect, just for you to try. We didn't hug. We didn't make promises. But when they left, something felt slightly less broken. 8 months later, in August 2025, I'm writing this sitting in my backyard on a warm summer evening. Marcus and I speak occasionally now, brief phone calls where he tells me about his work as a project manager at a mid-sized construction firm. He's earning his way, living within his means, and according to Ethan, fighting less with Jennifer. We're not healed. Maybe we never will be fully, but there's a mutual respect now that didn't exist before. Marcus knows I won't bail him out. I know he's learning to stand on his own. It's a different relationship than I imagined, but it's honest in a way it never was before. My will remains unchanged. Bennett Construction thrives under David's leadership. My house is paid off, and I spend my time between the business, lunches with Ethan, and volunteer work at the hospital in Catherine's memory. Sometimes I look at that cheap $20 mug, which I've kept as a reminder. It sits on my desk in my study, not as a symbol of pain anymore, but as a reminder that sometimes the smallest disrespects teach the biggest lessons. To anyone reading this who's struggling with family taking them for granted, understand, setting boundaries isn't cruel. It's necessary. Demanding respect isn't selfish. It's healthy. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do is stop accepting the unacceptable, even from people you love unconditionally. Marcus learned. I learned. And Ethan is learning that love and respect must coexist, not just in theory, but in practice. This story doesn't have a fairy tale ending, but it has something better: truth and dignity. And the hard-won peace that comes from finally, after too many years, choosing yourself without apology. If you found this story meaningful, please subscribe to Shattered Vengeance and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our daily true stories. Leave a like if this resonated with you, and tell me in the comments what part of this journey affected you most. And please, share what city you're watching from. I love hearing from viewers across Canada and beyond. Your support keeps these important stories alive. Thank you for listening to mine.